Some acts of kindness are done without expecting anything in return, but sometimes they come back in the most unexpected ways. This is the story of a single night and how one quiet decision changed two lives forever. Before we begin, if you love touching stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video, because sometimes leaving just a small mark is enough. As the night slowly swept through the city with the wind, Lucas Becker was behind the wheel, struggling to keep his eyes open. His truck groaned with every gear shift, and the headlights didn't seem to light up the road ahead. They looked like they were reaching into the future with exhaustion. In the passenger seat, his 6-year-old daughter Mila had her head resting on her knees, hugging her stuffed bear. She was asleep, but restless, just like her father. Lucas had spent the whole day repairing air conditioners at an industrial facility covered in grime. But that was normal. What wasn't normal was the red LED sign he saw on the road that evening. As he passed the hospital, his eyes drifted there instinctively. Urgent, ORH negative blood needed. No matching donor found. The words hit his brain like a dart. Lucas's heartbeat quickened. ORH negative, his blood type. Rare. Needed. Hard to find. When he pulled over, Mila opened her eyes. "Daddy," she mumbled sleepily. "I need to help someone," Lucas said. "It'll just take a little time." When he stepped into the hospital, the silence inside felt strange next to the urgency of the emergency room. The nurse raised her eyebrows as she checked his ID. "You're ORH negative?" "Yes," Lucas replied. "I'm on the backup list. But let's not wait for that today. I'm ready." He gave a quick glance at the children's waiting room, where his daughter was now asleep, rolled up his sleeve, and sat down. The four went in, and the blood began to flow. As his whole body slowly numbed, he stared at the ceiling. He tried not to think, tried not to remember the night he lost his wife. He had been in a hospital room back then too. Same silence, same emergency, but no blood had been found. And because of that, Mila had grown up without a mother. That day, he made himself a promise. No matter what, one day someone else's life wouldn't be cut short because of that same lack. As the blood bag filled, the nurse's voice startled him. "You just bought us time. You may have saved her life." Lucas closed his eyes. "Would you like to give your name?" the nurse asked. "No," Lucas said quietly. "I just want her to live." He walked out holding a small note written on the back of a repair invoice. "No need to thank me. I just wanted her to live." Mila was still asleep. He picked her up, kissed her forehead, and quietly left the hospital. On the road, the weight inside him felt lighter, but he had no idea this was just the beginning. He didn't know who the woman was, or how the next morning would completely change his life. Because that night, Lucas hadn't just donated blood. That night, he gave a second chance to Isabel Schneider, the owner of a multi-billion-dollar healthcare empire. And Isabel would stop at nothing to find this nameless hero. When Isabel Schneider opened her eyes, the beeping of the machines echoing through the hospital room rang in her ears like a song. "My ceiling," she thought in the first few seconds. No, this was somewhere else. The ceiling was lower, the light softer. Her body refused to move. There was a deep ache in her chest, both physical and emotional. Her mind wasn't fully clear yet, but she could already feel something had changed inside. Death had touched her, but hadn't taken her. And this time, Isabel knew it wasn't a coincidence. In the chair next to her sat Emily, her assistant for years, and also her closest confidant. Her eyes were dark with exhaustion, her hair a mess. The moment she noticed Isabel was awake, she sat up straight. "Isabel," she whispered, "you're awake." "What happened?" Isabel asked. Her voice was hoarse, but what she really meant was, "Am I really still here?" "You were in an accident," Emily said. A delivery truck swerved into the path of a car that was trying to overtake. "You turned left, there was a child on the road. You saved their life. But you had massive internal bleeding. They couldn't find blood. You needed emergency surgery." Emily paused, her eyes filling with tears. "But someone showed up, just after midnight. Didn't ask any questions. Donated their blood. And now you're alive." Isabel took in her words in silence. "Who was it?" she finally asked. Emily handed her a plastic folder. She pulled out a piece of paper. It was an old repair receipt, folded and worn. Only one sentence was written on it. "No need to thank me. I just wanted her to live." Isabel stared at the note for a long time. No name, no signature, just a simple truth. Not indifferent, but selfless. "Can we find him?" Isabel asked. Her voice was still weak, but now there was something else in it, determination. Emily nodded. Security cameras only caught a few frames. His face isn't clear, but we've got a match from the blood donation system. Lucas Becker, 35, widower, works for a maintenance company. No registered address. But he had a little girl with him, around 6 years old. Isabel's throat tightened. That man. He came to the hospital with a child and gave his blood without asking for anything in return. This wasn't a debt. It wasn't an investment. This was faith. Faith that a stranger's life was worth saving. And it shattered everything Isabel had built her business logic upon. In that moment, Isabel made a decision. She would find this man, but not as a CEO, as a woman. Not just to say thank you to the stranger who saved her life, but to learn something all over again. Meanwhile, that morning, Lucas was in the corner of the kitchen in his old apartment, making breakfast with toast that he'd slightly overcooked. His eyes were still tired, but that strange peace inside him, maybe for the first time, made the morning feel meaningful. Mila was at her art desk, drawing a sun with colored pencils. Not yellow but red, with a heart in the center. Below it, in small letters, she had written, "My dad's blood is strong." He looked at her quietly. Even if he didn't fully understand it, he felt something had changed. That night, he hadn't just saved a life with his blood. Maybe he had opened a new door in his own life too. But he didn't know yet what had just begun. And he didn't know. Isabel was already on her way. Lucas didn't hear the call while he was crouched on the roof of the repair shop, inspecting an old ventilation system. The sun was directly overhead. Sweat ran down his forehead, and rusty bolts strained the seams of his gloves. This kind of work was a form of meditation for him. No one talked, no one asked questions. Just mechanical problems and their solutions. Simple, quiet, safe. When he came down, there were 2 missed calls on his phone. The number wasn't familiar. He deleted them without a second thought. No one was expecting anything urgent from him anyway. Life had only been asking one thing of him for a while now. Just stay standing. Nothing more. Around the same time, Isabel Schneider wasn't in her executive office. She was staring out the window of a children's hospital. Through the glass, a little boy was folding paper airplanes with a nurse, despite his arm being in a cast. She saw him smile, a real, pure smile. And something ached inside her. A childlike that had his life changed at the cost of her own. And the man who made that happen was still out there, living his normal life, maybe struggling with the ordinariness of surviving another day, unaware of who he had saved. Emily appeared behind her. We got the results. Based on the time of the blood donation and the camera match, we're 99% sure it was Lucas Becker. We went to the maintenance company he works for. But he works mobile. No fixed address. House calls came up empty. Isabel nodded. And the girl? Her name is Mila. She's 6. Registered for school, but no home address listed. Probably being homeschooled or in some kind of unofficial setup. Isabel turned her eyes back to the window. I have to find him. This isn't just about saying thank you. This is about humanity. Emily stayed quiet because she could feel her boss wasn't just an executive anymore. She was someone trying to open her heart. And this search was the first sign of a real transformation. When Lucas came home that evening, Mila was sitting inside a cardboard box, saying she was building a spaceship. This part is the kitchen. This side is the bed. And over here is the laser beam. Lucas laughed. And this is the most important part, he said, showing her a piece of pen taped with electrical tape. The control panel. Mila nodded. But you can't go to space without light. Lucas pulled out an old flashlight from his pocket. If you're ready, let's launch, he said and turned it on. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Lucas's shoulders tensed automatically. No one ever came by this late. Not in this neighborhood. Mila went quiet. Is someone here? She whispered. I don't think so, Lucas replied, walking to the door. When he opened it, 2 women were standing in front of him. One was young, straight-haired, and dressed formally. Emily. The other? No, he didn't recognize her. But her eyes felt familiar somehow. The woman was holding a folded-up drawing, a child's drawing done with red sun crayons, clearly Mila's. Hi, the woman said, her voice unexpectedly gentle. My name is Isabel Schneider. Lucas furrowed his brow. Can I help you? The woman smiled softly. You gave me your blood. That night at the hospital. You saved my life. And I don't just want to say thank you. I want to get to know you. Lucas stayed silent for a few seconds. His eyes went from Mila to Isabel. I didn't do it for attention, he said. I just wanted something to go right. Isabel didn't look away. That's exactly why I'm here. Lucas thought for a few more seconds. Then the hinges of the door quietly pulled back. Come in, he said. And that small invitation was more than just a thank you. It was the first real coming together of two very different worlds. When Isabel stepped inside, the apartment she saw was so simple and unpretentious that, for a moment, all the luxurious offices and fancy conference rooms she had been in throughout her career suddenly felt meaningless. The room wasn't warm, but the people in it were. Drawings Mila had made were hung on the wall. Some had stars, and some showed a little girl holding hands with Lucas. Nothing in this house was expensive, but everything was real. Mila appeared hesitantly from behind the door. The moment her eyes recognized the picture in Isabel's hand, they lit up wide. That's me, she said excitedly. And that's my dad. Isabel knelt down and held up the drawing. I can't believe I'm holding your artwork, she said gently. This is a drawing from the heart. Mila came closer and placed her hand on Isabel's arm. Are you okay now? Isabel's throat tightened. The child's sincere, straight-to-the-heart words reminded her of a feeling she had long forgotten. Yes, she whispered. Thanks to your dad. More than okay. Lucas, watching them quietly for a moment, went into the kitchen. As he made coffee, his hands trembled slightly. No one had ever entered his life so suddenly, especially not someone this powerful. But at the same time, there was a strange sense of peace. Because this woman was nothing like any CEO he had ever known. There was no superiority in her eyes, no arrogance in her voice. Just gratitude. When he returned to the living room, Isabel was inspecting Mila's spaceship. This must be the laser module, she asked. Mila nodded. But the light's kind of weak. Sometimes it flickers. Let me help with that, Lucas said, tightening a screw from his pocket. Then he looked at Isabel. Thanks for not bringing some expensive thank you card, he said with a small smile. Isabel smiled back. A real thank you can't be framed anyway. As the minutes passed, the conversation grew more natural, more relaxed. Isabel had set aside her CEO identity. She was just a woman here. And Lucas, slowly, was letting his guard down. At one point, Isabel asked, Can I ask you something? That night, why did you stop? Why did you come? Lucas looked down for a moment. Years ago, Mila's mom had a bad accident and lost a lot of blood. Her blood type was ORH negative, just like yours. But that night, the hospital didn't have enough blood. They didn't make it in time. I signed up after that, in case someone else didn't have to lose like we did. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. So, when you saved me, you were reliving your past? Lucas nodded. But this time, someone lived. And that doesn't erase the past. Sometimes, it's just enough for something to be right. That night, before Isabel left, she stood at the door. It had started to drizzle. Lucas kept the door half open, and Mila was inside drawing, watching them. This might not be my last visit, Isabel said, her voice a little unsure. Lucas nodded briefly. You save someone, and then they stay in front of you. It's new, but not strange. Isabel smiled. I'm learning too. Then she reached out her hand, and when it met Lucas's, it wasn't a handshake, it was an acknowledgement. Thank you, she said again. Lucas replied, his voice steady. Thank you. Tonight, someone saw me as a person, not a donor, just a dad. Isabel walked away. But from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. Not for her, not for Lucas. As Isabel gripped her steering wheel tightly while pulling out of the parking lot, the ache in her chest grew stronger. It wasn't the pain from the accident, it was the weight of something happening in her life for the first time that was completely out of her control. For years, she had lived by planning, calculating, reducing emotions to charts and data. But Lucas Becker, he couldn't be included in her system. He was the variable outside the equation, the living embodiment of an action that came straight from the heart, without calculation. When she returned home, everything felt too big, too empty. The paintings on the walls, the designer furniture, the perfect arrangement, all had lost their meaning. She dropped her bag on the floor, took off her shoes, and sat in front of the large window in the living room for the first time, just thinking, not focusing on any project, just letting Lucas's words echo inside her. This time someone lived. And sometimes that's enough. Lucas, on the other hand, went into the quiet kitchen after putting Mila to bed that evening. He sat down and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. He wanted to write something. Maybe a thank you note, maybe just to get things off his chest. But the pen never touched the paper, because he didn't know what to say. That woman Isabel had come to his house today and listened to his past without asking for explanations or defenses, without judging his silence, without knowing his story. And for the first time in years, Lucas realized how valuable it could be just to have someone there. The next day, Isabel received an unexpected message. Emily had left a file on her desk without asking. The title was written in bold font, "Resource Cuts During Langford Health Network's Crisis 4 Years Ago." As she quickly skimmed the contents, her eyes widened. During a routine restructuring process, the emergency blood bank's budget had been temporarily suspended. One of the hospitals affected was the one where Lucas's wife had been taken that night. The paper shook in her hand. She hadn't made the decision directly, but her signature was among the approvals from that period. She hadn't read the details. She had rushed through the paperwork to avoid another crisis. But now, that document she had signed in haste had cost a woman her life. In that moment, she felt a kind of responsibility she'd never felt at any award ceremony. A sharp, stabbing sense of being too late. That evening, at sunset, a car stopped on the street where Lucas lived. It was starting to drizzle again. Isabel pulled up her hood, waited a few seconds looking outside, then walked toward the door. When Lucas opened it, his expression immediately changed. Before inviting her in, he stood for a moment, looking directly at her. "I need to tell you something," Isabel said. "Something real, and it might hurt." Without saying anything, Lucas opened the door slightly. Isabel stepped inside. She held an envelope and placed it on the table. 4 years ago, the blood supply that was supposed to be sent to the hospital where your wife was taken was cut by us. It was a systemic decision, but I was the head of that system. I didn't make the decision directly, but I signed it, without reading it, without understanding it. I found out today. Lucas didn't even look at the paper. Still staring at her, he asked, "Did you know me back then?" "No." "Did you know it was my wife?" "No." "Then there's only one thing left that could make me believe you're being honest. What are you going to do?" Isabel held her breath. This was the first time in her career she was waiting for someone else's answer. "I gave everything to build this system," she said. "But if I signed something that cost a woman her life, then I have to rebuild it with my own hands. And I want to do that with you, if you'll let me." Lucas turned his eyes to Mila's red sun with a heart in the center, hanging on the wall. He thought silently, then slowly nodded. "If this time you're not just signing papers, then stay." Isabel paused. At the door, in the half-dark, "I want to stay," she said. And for the first time, that word doesn't mean anything else. That night, as Lucas sat next to Isabel, he didn't say a word. Sometimes, silence built bridges where words couldn't. And Isabel didn't feel his silence as rejection but as acceptance. The kind of acceptance that felt like trust, even without being spoken. For the first time in a life shaped by presentations, press releases, and donation ceremonies, she was carrying the weight of a bond formed without words. And instead of crushing her, it made her feel lighter. When morning came, Isabel didn't go home. She sat at the breakfast table with Lucas and Mila. She burned the edges of the toast, brewed tea instead of coffee by mistake. But none of it mattered, because, for the first time, what she was doing wasn't serving a goal, it was serving a presence. And that morning, Mila gave her a card. It had a picture of a house. 3 stick figures, one with long hair, one with short hair, one small. Underneath, it said, "Us." Isabel's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry, because crying symbolized loss. And she wasn't losing anything. She was being made whole again. Days passed. As autumn began to touch the city, Isabel made a decision. A new donation system would be built. An app called Matchline would match patients in urgent need of blood with volunteer donors in real time. No financial support was needed. No social media campaigns. Just a simple yes. Just someone saying, "I'm here." The launch was planned as a major event, but Isabel made one small change. "This program isn't a PR success," she told Emily. "It's the echo of a sacrifice a man made on a quiet night. I won't be alone on that stage." On the night of the event, the room was quiet. The lights were soft, and the background music was barely audible. Isabel stepped onto the stage first, not just as a CEO anymore, but as a witness, a survivor, someone who had changed. "Tonight, I'm not going to tell you how many hospitals we've built or how many patients we've treated. she said at the microphone. I'm going to tell you how my life changed in one night. Behind her, a screen slowly lit up. Isabel's first moments after waking from surgery. The scan note Lucas had written, Mila's drawing, and finally. Some lives are saved with just one yes. The audience stayed silent. In Isabel's eyes, they saw a leader speaking not of numbers but of people. Then she reached out her hand. And now, I invite the person who inspired this system to join me. Mr. Lucas Becker. Lucas hadn't worn a suit. As always, he came out in his flannel shirt, nodding instead of shaking hands. Not like a hero, just like a dad. I'm not going to give a speech, he said, not leaning into the microphone. Because the thing that changed my life wasn't words. It was seeing someone show up. I didn't know who she was that day, but today I do. Isabel didn't just save a life. She stepped into it. When Isabel joined him, Lucas turned to her, and just like he had opened his door that night, now he opened his arms. The whole room stood and applauded, but not for an achievement. For a bond, a trust, a healing. After that day, Isabel stayed on as head of her company. But now, someone new came to visit her home. Mila started calling her Galaxy Queen, because they had built a spaceship together. And Lucas, for the first time in his life, felt a woman not just by his side but in his heart. One day, while Lucas sat on the porch, Isabel came and sat beside him. Quietly, she took his hand. Do you think people can really change? She asked. Lucas smiled. They don't have to, but they can heal. And I think we did both. Isabel rested her head on his shoulder. For the first time, I didn't buy a life. For the first time, someone just chose to stay. Lucas didn't answer, because some answers are given just by being there.